Before you begin to listen to this episode, I want to give you a trigger warning. Both myself and Megan discuss in detail our childbirth stories, and this may be difficult for some of you to listen to. I've added links to support services in the show notes in case you need them. If you enjoy listening to inspirational stories from people just like us, facing the fear and doing it anyway, then you're in the right place. My name is Claire Hill, and this is the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. Hello, welcome to episode 5. Ooh, episode 5, bloody hell. Today I am bringing you the wonderful Megan Vickers, and this episode is a little longer than, well, I say the normal episode I've only done 4, but it is a little bit longer because it was amazing. Her work and her book, which I've now bought, as you'll find out in the episode. I'm a shit podcast host. I'm not. I'm getting better. But I didn't buy a book before the episode, so I'm an absolute idiot for that. However, I have now got it. I have started reading it. I've bought it for one of my best mates who's going to have her baby soon. And this podcast just makes you feel so much better as a mum, as a parent. And the magic of this episode is Megan's work at empowering you as a woman in understanding your body. And let's be honest, we don't learn that much about the ins and outs of our body. And when you're pregnant and when you've had your baby, it's not really discussed as much as maybe it should be, of the changes that you're going to experience. And I know personally, firsthand, I did have an assisted birth. So things were a little bit different to a totally natural birth. And because I have high mobility, there were some issues afterwards. And I was just so scared all the time. And I wish I'd had Megan's book before and during that whole time. I'm very lucky to actually know Megan in real life. We went to university together and I haven't seen her for years. But isn't it wonderful when you reconnect with an old friend and you start talking and it's like you saw each other yesterday? And I love her dearly. She's such a magical, beautiful individual. And I'm really, really, really chuffed that I get to share this episode with you. I get to share what magic she has in her brain, and also the fact that she's put some of that magic in her brain into a book that you can actually buy. And I will have all of the links in the show notes. And please do buy it if you are pregnant. And actually, let me say, even before the episode starts, we talk about a lady who was 71 that came to Megan for support. And what Megan says is that at any time after you've had your baby, not everybody, but most people will be able to heal after that birth. And it just makes me really excited about how my body is going to feel once I do the work in the book. So yeah, I'm really happy to be able to share the magic that is Megan Vickers, because she is one hell of a magic lady. And before I go, my best mate Bex has told me that I've not advertised my Patreon enough, or not spoken about it enough. And if you're new to Patreon, which I definitely am, and Bex isn't, and my father-in-law Chris isn't either, they have informed me that I need to be telling you more about it. So this is what I'm doing. So skip forward 30 seconds if you're not interested. I'm absolutely fine. I won't find out. But Patreon is a way to financially support the podcast with just a small amount of money each month. And as a benefit to you for contributing to the podcast, I bring you amazing episodes and it helps me to bring more fantastic content to you. But I also give you like little bonuses. There's even one that you get a massive discount off of my Vivid wire art. So the link for the Patreon is at the bottom of the show notes. So Bex, I hope that was good enough information. You will tell me. But yeah, if there's anything that you'd like to hear more of on the podcast, if you feel that you'd be a good fit for the podcast because you've got a story to tell where you face the fear and done it anyway, send me an email. Again, my email address is in the show notes. And I'm just tell me how much you love Megan after this episode. You're going to love her, and buy a book. Not too force feed, but buy a book. But yeah, that's me sounding off now. Hello, Megan Vickers.
Hey, Vid, it's good to see you.
Oh, before we carry on, just say that my nickname, everybody, is Vid from my maiden name, and Megan is a real life friend, though we haven't actually seen each other in person for a few years. But Megan is a friend that I've actually seen in real life. We've cuddled, lots of cuddle, and you called me Vid. So before
I don't think I've ever called you Claire, actually.
No, there's only a few people that do now. I'm still, my friends here, I'm Auntie Vid to all their kids.
Brilliant. That's cool.
Yeah, and that's where the vivid comes from, everyone. So I'm so happy you said that you come on the podcast.
Of course, I'd come on your podcast. I love it.
Amazing. So for those of people that don't know who you are, what's your name and where do you come from?
Well, Stilla, my name is Megan Vickers. So we met at uni when I was studying physio. I still am a physio, and now I specialise in pregnancy and postnatal physio. So the majority of people I see are women. I do see some men still, because my expertise is around the pelvis, and they have one too, and they get back pain too. Amazingly, it tends to always flow when they have kids as well. So very often, so you think they're bending over the cot, changing their routine, they don't get as much rest, life kind of balance changes. So quite often I'll be doing looking after the mum through her pregnancy, then she'd have the baby, I'll do a postnatal check, and then I do her husband's initial physio for his back. So I specialise in pregnancy and postnatal stuff, which has kind of just naturally progressed, much like you and your podcast, into a book, which has been amazing. Yeah.
Oh God, I'm so proud of you. When I saw that you'd written a book, you was coming out, I was like, oh my goodness, I just want to hear all about that. Before you wrote the book, did you? Because I remember having this conversation with you about women's health. I don't know if you remember the conversation, and we won't go into it because I was probably drunk, and I know that I sort of didn't understand what women's health is. And for the record, I really understand what women's health is all about now, because of after having Jackson. But I remember you being so passionate about it. Do you remember even before that, do you remember when you decided to become a physiotherapist and then sort of gravitate towards that women's health and that sort of area of your work?
Yeah, well, I think I was working for a Pilates Institute, and so we did physio and Pilates there. And Pilates is really commonly used as a treatment in pregnancy and after you have a baby, because it's all about recentering the foundations of your tummy and your pelvic floor and improving our posture. And all of those things change massively when we're pregnant and after we've given birth. So I was seeing lots of women going through that period, and I really started to feel like I was only looking at half the picture by staying on the outside, and might be addressing pelvis changes, but unless I've addressed the pelvic floor changes, am I really fixing the pelvis? And I've just always loved helping people. I grew up thinking I'd be a nurse, and I do love my job because I see people get better. I hate my job when they don't get better because I don't feel like I've succeeded in what I wanted to do, and they're suffering, and I don't like that. So I always enjoy my job when I see people get better. And the amazing thing with pregnancy and after you have a baby is you get better. So I see myself as like a facilitator to that. You will heal, you will rebuild, you will grow stronger, and I can enhance that with you and teaching you and empowering you how to do that completely. So it was kind of at that time when I was teaching Pilates that I was like, I'm missing a trick here. I'm not looking after that whole self. And so then I trained in women's health, and that was maybe 11 years ago now. And so for the record, women's health has recently changed and is now called pelvic obstetric and gynecological physiotherapy.
Right, okay.
We still call it women's health, so don't worry, you can still call it women's health. But I really appreciate the change, because a lot of people call themselves a women's health physio, much like I could call myself a men's health physio. I treat men, but I don't treat the whole of a man. And so I don't treat male pelvic floors, for example. And so in women's health, you can, you can specialize in looking after women, but not necessarily include that of the pelvic floor and the gynecological or reproductive system, all those sorts of things. So in pelvis, obstetrics, and gynecological physio, whilst it's more of a mouthful, it does kind of tell you what exactly I do, really. Anything to do with the vagina, the pelvic floor, the pelvis, the back, pregnancy, post-birth, menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, like all of those things.
Wow. Because the conversation, I think I didn't understand why you went into it. And I remember then you talking so passionately about how you give back a quality of life to these women that suffer. And then obviously and then I had Jackson, and then I now really understand that how debilitating it can be to have those issues after you give birth, or even just, I know someone that's recently had gone through a similar thing, and just getting that quality of life back, that you feel like a normal person's the wrong way to say it, but
you're
a bit more control, a bit of control over your body.
Yeah. And you lose a lot when you can't engage in the sports and activities that you enjoy, and just day-to-day life. It's not day-to-day life. It feels difficult or laborious on your body just to be with your child and carry your child in the way that you wanted to, and take them for walks in the way that you wanted to. It feels like your body is not strong enough, and that is really impactful on both physicality, obviously, but also like mental health. It's really, really tough. And it's funny actually I think I do remember that conversation, and it's written in the very first part of the book. My friends all used to call me a fanny physio.
Yeah, that's basically what it was down. It was like, why do you want to do that? That's just not like, I just don't get it.
I know. And people would be like, do you touch vaginas and you get paid for it? Like, how many women do you think you fingered? Like, this really, really isn't my job. I remember one friend saying, like, do you need an assistant? Like, can I come and like hold your gloves or something? And amazingly, 11 years ago, like pre-kids, pre-marriage, they were the questions. No one says those things to me now. No one does. That's part of getting older, but also like going through that experience, like being in a long-term relationship, you see and appreciate changes, I think, in your partner, cyclically, hormonally, with pregnancy and birth, and also physically, the changes that come. Most birth partners now witness their children's birth, but both partners in a relationship witness their children's birth, and so they physically see what goes on, and they understand then that it is not family physio, it's a whole lot more than that. So yeah, I can totally like map out that change and when that started to change and the conversation change. And no one asks me how many vaginas I feel in a day now.
No, I'm
it's not important.
I'm so ashamed of my naivety at the time. But I think, at the time, that's 11 years ago, we were 25, 26, so
I think don't feel ashamed of it, because it's all relevant, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. The information that is given to us about pregnancy and postnatal, I think specifically, it's not relevant to us until it's relevant. We kind of brush it off until it's relevant. Yes, you listen to your friend talking about the sleepless nights and the morning sickness, but you don't really understand it and really listen until it's happening to you. And then you go back to that conversation. You think, oh, what did she say? Like, it helped her. And until it's relevant, you experience it. You just don't take it for granted, or it's not going to happen to me. It's probably one of the biggest things, because I went through that.
Exactly. I did that. I was like, there's women in tea fields that have a baby and the next day they get back to work. I'm going to be one of those people. My hypermobility will mean that I will basically sneeze this baby out. I am a woman, a mum of like Zen, and I was all just sort of one with the world, earth mother.
Totally. Because they can do it, so why can't I do it? And so it's, we're put as women into this big group of like, we're all the same. We are not all the same. That mum who is working in a tea field through her pregnancy has helped her pelvis to stretch and open and baby descend day by day. She's practiced those positions, so that's likely going to be the position that she gives birth in. Equally, I'm talking of myself here, thinking I was going to sneeze my baby out, I was going to breathe my baby out, because I stayed strong and I weightlifted all the way through, and I kept my strength up and I had great balance and all these really non-meaningful things when you think about labor, where things have to stretch and give and let go, and you really have to let go of both control and also your muscles. And of course it was going to take me longer to birth my baby because I had a stiff muscly perineum. I didn't acknowledge that. I just still thought, despite that, I should be giving birth within 90 minutes. And if not, we need to accelerate the process and go for instruments and cuts and incisions and medical side of things. My body just needed time.
Right.
Because my body was different to the lady next door. The stiffness in my perineum, the give in my body was different to my sisters, my friends, and it just needed something different.
Yeah. So you've got two little girls.
Yeah.
Girls.
Robin and Coco.
Robin, I love the names. Absolutely. Like, just gorgeous names.
Thank you.
And you describe the deliveries of both girls. Were they similar or different?
Well, they're quite, I think everyone's birth story, when you've given birth, it's quite impactful, isn't it? And it kind of, we don't forget it at all. And I do think, it does impact in parts on our children as well. Just sometimes, maybe that's me being romantic, but this certain personality traits kind of make me think, I wonder if that's got anything to do with that. For example, I'll just explain that before I go back into the birth. My second, Coco, was taken away from me as soon as she was born. And it was a good few hours until I saw her. She has this really deep and severe fear of being left. So wherever we are, she will freak out. Even if we're at home and she's downstairs and I'll go upstairs and I haven't told her where I'm going, she will freak out. She's terrified of being left alone. And yeah, much more so with me, but whoever's looking after her, she doesn't want to be left. And I'm sure that comes back to that, but who knows. So my first birth, and they're very different, and I talk about both of them in my book, which was quite a hard thing to do because I had to overcome a big thing in order to use that as a story that I could help other people with. And that was failure. I really felt like I had failed in my first birth. And I think there's often a sense of that as women, that unless you do it this sort of way, then you've not succeeded, which is total crap. Because obviously the only important thing is not just having a healthy baby. That is not the only important thing. That is probably the most important thing. But it's also that you survive it and you thrive from it, and that you feel you and acknowledge this amazing thing that you've done, whatever way it turns out to be. Because the way it turns out isn't a measure of your success. It's a measure of what your body needed and the physiological process of birth. And you and your partner making a baby that fits through your birth canal, your body being able to relax and give in the places that it needs to, your baby being in the right position, you having good pain relief, it being the right time of day, that you were well rested, all those sorts of things, which obviously the stars don't always align. So I had gone into my first birth just a bit blind, I hadn't taken into account all the things that could happen, because they weren't going to happen to me, right? And so my biggest fear at that point was having a tear. And so a tear when we give birth can affect the muscle and the perineal part between the vagina and the back passage. And I was terrified about that, because if you do have a tear, then you're more at risk of incontinence. And incontinence was, the biggest one for me at that time. I didn't want to be incontinent because a pelvic floor physio doesn't leak urine. And so even now, I can tell I'm not talking about myself very kindly. Yeah. I had to, overcome this quite a bit to write a kind story in the book. And my friend picked it up. She said, all these women's stories, and what you're trying to say to women is just so caring and nurturing and empowering and lovely, but your tone changes when you talk about yourself. Wow. And if you want women to believe that they can feel empowered, that they can heal, and that they are deserving of all this process, then you need to believe it yourself. And I'm like, I know I'm not going to say I do, but I'm closer. And I've had to work on that and acknowledge it. That my tone did change when I thought about myself and my birth story. So I'll try and do that now and not be quite so hard on myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the friend that's just said that to you. You really are like, when you speak about things and you talk about other people, the way that you, I know we were talking about this before we started recording, how you sort of enter a room and you brighten up everybody's day, because you are so nurturing in everything that you say. Like, I remember some conversations, and I mean, we're going back in the time machine now too. We spent a lot of time together at uni, and I would have this boy issue. I mean, we both probably did, didn't we? And having all of these issues, you'd be like, but Vid, you're the most beautiful girl, and oh my God, I love you, you're so, and literally every time, and we used to work in that pub together, and it would be like, oh, Vid, you look so great today. And I'm like, are you joking? What are you talking about? But that kind of way, that's what probably makes you such an amazing physio, because again, like when I had to go and see a physio, the most vulnerable you ever feel. I felt more vulnerable after having Jackson than I did during the delivery and in the pregnancy. So your mate's got it spot on. That is how you speak about it. But I'm glad you're working towards being able to talk about it. I think we all need to take a lesson with that, don't we?
Well, it's just probably as women and as mums maybe a bit more, because you just don't have time to work on yourself as much because you're just torn, aren't you? It's probably something that we all need to, I don't know, spend a bit of consciousness on, perhaps. But it's interesting actually you saying that about uni, because I put it down to, I feel like I've been really lucky in that the amount of women that I've seen at that vulnerable time has really shaped me as a person. I think, you know, I am trusted with women's most vulnerable time multiple times a day, and I'm never more like emotionally exhausted, but in a nice way, than after a day with like several new patients, because that's, you know, all those new birth stories, all those new emotions. Most of the time we're both crying, because it's a lot, you know, on both physicality and emotional, that the toll that it has taken on them. So yeah, I'm quite thankful of the women that I've got to see, because they have, I think, shaped some of my personality. But it's interesting hearing you say that. It's obviously not all of that, and I have to take a little bit of gratitude from you saying that maybe a bit of me as well.
Yeah, like if anybody, I'm guessing a lot of our old uni crew is going to listen to this episode. Well, you should do anyway. Can you listen to this episode, please? But I think
let's mention a few more names of who should be. Yeah,
we'll make a list and direct message them. But yeah, I definitely think you, like, even you said before you wanted to be a nurse, going into that world of, and the thing is as well, you went into this world before having Robin, didn't you? Into that fun, and
that's true.
But then obviously going through the delivery with Robin, maybe that changed because you could be more empathic, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely, and a bit more grounded in, you know, going through those things myself. But also, now I'm a perfect case study. Hey, so just to rush to the nitty gritty, after 90 minutes, which I had as a milestone in my head of, your first labour should take 90 minutes, because if you push for longer than that, you're more at risk of trauma. So in my head, 90 minutes, boom. And everyone who doesn't push for longer than 90 minutes have perineal trauma. That's not true. It's just more likely. And I hadn't given myself like that consciousness of, it is going to take longer because you did weight lift and you were working hard on building muscle for your pregnancy. It is going to take longer. So at 90 minutes, when baby hadn't been born, Robin hadn't even, I didn't know this at that point, I'd been pushing, but she wasn't even in my birth canal. And I only know that afterwards, and I talk to women about this now, is the pain that came when I was in stirrups and literally about to be cut when she entered my birth canal. And I know the difference now, because I'd never felt that before. Hey, she was my first baby. Right. So the pain that you have from contractions is rhythmical. It's quite, you get into it, and yes, it's painful, but you understand it, and it keeps happening, and it's the same pain. It's the same pain. The pain when baby enters your birth canal and stretches your vagina is like no other. It's a different pain, right? And I'm not saying that to scare anybody. It's just an acknowledgement of things are changing now. You've got this is closer to me and your baby. There is a change here. And I had that first urge and that first change when I was being cut for my episiotomy.
Right.
So it was maybe just pushing too soon. So then I had an episiotomy where they cut to make more space in the vagina for baby to come down.
Hands up if you've got an episiotomy.
A slash. So yeah, they slashed me. So I call her my slash and grab, because they cut me and then pulled her down the birth canal. I mean, I'm really not very kind to myself.
They did the same. It was so funny. Sorry to interrupt, but Jackson had started coming down the birth canal for me, but they had to be manipulated, and the guy obviously slashed me straight up there. And Dan said afterwards, he's like, that's the consultant that manipulated Jackson. And honestly, this bloke was about 6'5".
Oh Jesus.
Honestly, his hands were, no wonder I had so much trauma afterwards, Meg. Honestly, it was like, I can't even. And Dan remembers just walking by. He was walking ahead of us, and he's just so much shorter than like Dan was so much shorter. So yeah, so that happened. So slash and grab, they grabbed Robin.
Pulled her out, and I'm like, did I tear? No, you didn't tear. I've got an episiotomy. Woo! Like, success. Or not. So like I said, at that point, my biggest worry was having a tear or being incontinent. A few weeks after Robin was born, so I was stitched up, it was all good. Robin was perfectly well when she was born, and initially made quite a good recovery. And then I went for a walk, because I'm strong if I'm doing this on my own, and I'm projecting strength, and if I can do it on my own and I can get back to exercise and practice what I preach, forget the fact that you've just had a slash and grab delivery. I really wanted to kind of get back moving and rebuilding my strength. I started to feel a prolapse in my vagina. So a prolapse is basically a downward movement of any of the organs into the vaginal space. And of course, this space, we've just had stretch that muscle to birth a baby, and it needs time to strengthen and shorten and heal. And I didn't perhaps give it enough time, because in my head at that point I still had that I'd had a natural delivery, because I'd given birth through my vagina, but I hadn't had a natural delivery. I'd had a very medical delivery. I'd had a slash and grab delivery, and my body had been pushed and cut beyond its normal stretch, so it was going to take longer for it to heal. And that truth goes for any instrumental delivery, including a cesarean section. It's going to take longer because your body hasn't stretched its normal stretch, like the lady in the tea field. Potentially, it's gone beyond its natural stretch, and so now it needs longer to heal. So then for the next 3 years, I was really rehabbing from this feeling of something being out of place, discomfort, uncomfortableness within my vagina, that I just spent so much of my day thinking about that part of my body, which I'd rarely considered before. And it was then that I understood the complexity of fanny physio, and it's not just that, it seeps into everything. And my ability to mother as I wanted to hold my baby. Like, I never got to the point with Robin where I could carry her in a sling. And that was, something I really wanted to do. And I never healed enough to be able to do that. Like, she was growing quicker than the rate at which I was healing. And so never kind of got round to it. But I never really understood what I'd really been through, the trauma, if you like, until I'd had Coco, my second. Right. So Coco was a natural birth, and I can see that now because I've birthed very differently. So with Coco, I managed to get into the water. Her birth kind of came a bit strong once it had really kicked off. I managed to get in the water, but then again, it took a long time for her to come down. I was in the water for the maximum amount of time, which I don't remember what it was now. I think it's different in the water than when you're on land, and it's shorter for a second delivery as well compared to a first. First are meant to take longer. Right. So I'd reached the maximum amount of time, and she wasn't coming. And they were like, we need to get you on the bed. And then the fear, like I had so much fear of the same thing happening again. And, I'd learned so much about myself, my body in the birth process that I was like, hang on a minute, I need a moment. I need a moment. So I was pulled up mostly. I don't think I did any of that. And I was like on my way out of the pool, and I just needed to like pause and take a breath and think about what was going on. And it's interesting, you said this to me about noticing that Jackson was more towards the left, that you weren't totally aware of that at the side, but at the time, but in retrospect you can look back and go, oh, I wonder, like that's we trust those feelings we don't always trust first time around.
No.
So I had this opportunity second time around to pause, think, and notice what was going on. She was right there. Hey, Coco was right at my vaginal entrance, but she just couldn't get past. And she was a big baby. She was like full pound and a half heavier than Robin was.
Oh, wow.
And again, I was exercising quite a lot through that pregnancy, so I still had this muscular wall that she needed to push through. And she was just really getting stuck. So I felt with my hands, and I reached underneath myself, and I could feel that her chin just was like almost like pushing up against my perineum. So the crown of her head was coming out, then going back in, coming out, going back in. It was the most bizarre feeling. And so I scooped a finger inside my vagina, and I scooped her chin out.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it didn't feel incredible at the time. It just felt like, God, you're stuck. Let me just get that bit out. Probably kind of what the 6-foot doctor did with Jackson. He put his hand in and felt where he was getting stuck, guided him down. And so once I'd got her head out, her body came really quickly, and it was all good at that point. And I literally had one foot in the birth pool and one foot on the step outside of it, wow. Halfway to the bed. And I was just like determined to get her out. And so that's why I think of my births as very differently. Whilst they were both vaginal deliveries, I was much more in tune with my body and what was going on second time around, which I think is fair, after any birth. And I really try now, any first time birth, you've never experienced this before, you never noticed it before. And I really try now, and I'm seeing mums who are pregnant, because I get that opportunity quite a lot in my job to help them prep for birth in a way that's less scary. It's not as scary. I try not to scare them, obviously, but I try and give them all of that information in a way that only you can feel what's going on in your body. And if you can't feel with your hands, or someone else to feel with your hands, and measure, like bring all that information that you have together to work out what you need, both in medical expertise, but trust yourself as well. Yes, you haven't done this before, but if you can identify what those feelings are, what that might mean, then impart that information to the midwife or your birth partner and who's helping you, because together that knowledge is probably going to ease the process. Does that make sense? I explained that correctly?
Yeah. I think you get it. You need to listen. It's finding that skill of listening to yourself. I mean, that's a massive skill in itself, but then understanding what your body's trying to tell you, and but you've never done this before, so you rely on medical professionals, I suppose, in the
at the time.
Yeah.
And you hear, depending on who you talk to, what you hear. So the biggest thing I'd heard going into Robin's birth was, oh gosh, when you get that first urge to push, you start pushing when you feel like you need a poo. The pressure in your bum. Everyone says like you'll feel that pressure in your bum, and that's when you start pushing. Well, I was so ready and waiting for this. And it was the main reason I declined an epidural, because I really wanted to feel when she was ready, so I could get into the right position so I could birth her. Well, got that feeling like I needed to poo, and then I'm like, boom, I've got the feeling, she's in the birth canal, I'm ready to go. No, I just needed to go for a poo. So there was something in my back passage. She wasn't in my birth canal. And so I confused the two feelings. And likewise, I mean, I'm not embarrassed about these things. I think it's just all part of it. I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
You're a legend. Go on.
When Coco was born, or when I was birthing her in the birthing pool, I was literally like, she's coming out now. She's coming out. I can feel her coming out. It's coming out. And I remember like birthing her. The midwife had the gloves ready. They'd laid out the birth stuff. I thought she'd come out, and I felt, and I could still feel her head inside my vagina. And I was like, oh, what was that then? I'm pretty sure. I mean, no one ever said, but I'm pretty sure I did a poo.
Yeah.
And that's what came out.
Yeah.
No one ever said, but after that point, I wasn't allowed to put my head in the water.
Yeah.
But it's the same feeling, hey, and it's a scary one, because we're told quite a lot, like the pressure in your bum, da da da, and all I had to do was reach inside my vagina and feel that she was in my vaginal canal.
Wow.
And and I knew it wasn't her.
But isn't there, like, and it's going back to when you were talking about being a fanny physio, this whole mentality of this is our body, this is our vagina, and being brave enough to just talk about your body like that, knowing the ins and outs of your genitals, all of it. There's just not taught to us, and it's only now, you become old. Obviously, your life is physio. You learn about all of it, but just me, you just don't ever explore your body in that way unless you have to. And just going back to when you were talking about the deliveries, that having everybody around me had these perfect deliveries, and mine just felt like it wasn't a nightmare, but because actually as soon as he was born, it was perfect, because I was still on loads of drugs. It was really good.
Best time ever.
Yeah, like I had the epidural, I was on the morphine, I had the oxytocin going in, I was all dripped up to the high heavens, and I remember really wheeling me through, and I was just like, this is my baby, I'm already feeding. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, look, oh my god, this is just so perfect. I can't feel my legs, I've got a catheter in, I don't have to wee for ages. It was just that so idyllic those first few hours after. And then I remember waking up, and then the pain was just awful. By the way, we'd spoken about this. I'd had a snatch and grab, but I had forceps, and so it was an assisted delivery as well. Just saying that for anyone who's not, it wasn't a cesarean, and pain was just ridiculous. And I remember saying to the midwife, "Can I have some more painkillers?" And they were like, "Well, we can give you paracetamol and ibuprofen." I was like, "No, I wanted some more morphine. Can I not get any more morphine?" They're like, "No." Just thinking, oh my god, I couldn't even walk out of the place. I think it's just sharing those experiences, that's it, about the delivery, and how you have this visualization in your head of how and I was, and hypnobirthing as well, all of that, visualizing the waves of the pain coming over me and him coming down the birth canal, and I was really into that, really visualizing how wonderful it was going to be. And another one of my friends had a baby, and I didn't know about her birth story until I was almost ready to have Jackson. And when she started talking about it, she was so emotional, because again, even talking about it now, I get goosebumps, because I remember trying to talk about it straight after. How was the birth? And I was like, I just can't talk about it. It's just too. They say that your body
really
remembers
common.
The trauma, isn't it? So like you can feel it in. So get all goosebumpy. But she got so upset, and her birth story was actually much more traumatic than mine. Absolute warrior, just thinking about her, I just love her so much. But she never told us any of that, because there were so many people around us that had perfect births. She felt like a failure because of how she had to deliver her baby. So they both survived the situation. Thing is, as well, I'm criticizing how people talk about the birth stories if they've done a really good job. I'm really happy for them, and actually they should be applauded. But it makes you feel like a failure, because all you hear is these good birth stories, don't you?
Yeah. And I think it comes back down to like thinking of it as a physiological process. It's not a measure of how great you are as a mother or as a human being, or it is a physiological process of growing and birthing a baby, and it needs a certain recipe for it to go one way, and if that recipe is not there, it's going to go another way. If you put blueberries in a blueberry muffin or chocolate chips, you're going to get two different things. And it's the same thing with like birthing a baby. Not everyone is going to have this journey, which means that they have a vaginal birth without instruments, or even a vaginal birth. It may be that actually this recipe is more suited to an abdominal birth, a cesarean section. It's not a measure of good or bad, or success or not, or failure or brilliant. It's literally a physiological process of how to get a baby safely out of your body. And the mum be safe and well as well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like in I spend a lot of time in the book. I was saying to someone this week, trying to say two things here, I'll do one at a time. So in the book, I try and teach mums about the body in an easy anatomical way, or easier anatomical way than just an anatomy book, and thinking of it like a house. And if you're building your house, right? And, you know, let's face it, when you get pregnant and you give birth, your body has never been more different, right, than what you've been used to over your life before that point. So it's like rebuilding your house, like you're rebuilding your body. And we all think already about what wallpaper we're going to put on the inside, like how the muscles on the outside are going to look, and what clothes we can wear, and all those things, right? And the outward appearance. But the most important part of building that house is the foundations. If you don't put down foundations, or you build a house on crappy foundations, no matter how good and expensive your wallpaper is, not going to be on the walls and the house falls down, right? Wow. So you need to build your foundation. It's good, isn't it? So good.
I love it.
And it's all those parts, right? So it's like, right, build the foundations, lay down a solid floor, and then a good framework, because the walls are going to attach that framework, and that's your skeleton. It's just as important as the muscles. If your skeleton's in a dodgy position, if you don't hold yourself in a good position, your walls aren't going to go up straight. So then you put the walls on, right? You build the bigger muscles on the outside. So just doing pelvic floor exercises is not going to bring you the most strength that you need to pick up a baby, to carry a baby in a sling, to push a buggy, to live your life. You need other muscles as well. So then they're the walls on the outside. You put that all on. And then the roof, that comes from your diaphragm and everything on top of that. Again, your posture and things like that. So now you have this solid home built on good foundations with a good structure around it, walls and a roof. But it's still not habitable because it's got no water and no electricity, right? So you still need those things. So you need to put into your body the fuels that it needs to work. We need to heal, right? And we need this real emphasis on nutrition after we've given birth, after we've been pregnant. You know, we can't eat what we know is good for us when we're pregnant, because the body just rejects it, right? I know very few people who've been able to eat their ideal diet when they're pregnant. My first was grown on a 50% hula hoops, and the other 50% was salt and vinegar McCoys. And that was all I ate when I was pregnant.
Yeah. Jackson was grown on chocolate. By the kilogram.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you wouldn't, if you were advising someone who was pregnant, that's not what you'd say. You're like, eat well, you're eating for you and your baby.
Yeah, I'd cry if I didn't have chocolate in the house. Like, if I couldn't put my hand on at least a kilogram of chocolate, like it was bad. Or donuts as well. I started crying once in Aldi because they didn't have any donuts. Yeah,
I cried once because James didn't peel the potatoes before mashing them, and I just wanted mashed potato without skins in them. And I cried.
Does he do that now?
No, I couldn't let him do that now. I mean, that's just a stupid thing to do, isn't it? I don't want to be picking skins out of my mashed potato.
No. It's efficient, but...
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I saw it this week, actually. I was talking to someone about, she's doing some research on menopause, and there's 2 books that she recommended around that time. And one was this really in-depth book called Perimenopause Power. And I think the other one, I'm pretty sure she said, was like Me and My Menopausal Vagina, and she just held them up so I could see the difference in the size. Like, the first book was about the same size as my book, the other one was like half the size. And she was like, I was like, oh god, you know, of course, you know, a mom looking at healing and rebuilding, they might need a quick go-to guide. You know, it might be better to just consolidate everything I've put in like a really quick go-to manual that they quickly look at. But then you don't learn about your body. You skip that opportunity to get to the end result without the learning. And it's just been something I've been thinking about this week. You know, a good chunk of that first bit is teaching you about your house and how to rebuild it, so that you put the importance on each of those layers. And I think that does add value to understand what happened as well in the birthing process, especially if it hasn't gone the way that you feel it could or you wanted it to go.
So how did you get into the position to write a book? Like, you must have been, I mean, I'm writing a book at the minute and I'm absolutely shitting my pants.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it's like, it is one of those things that I just really, really want to do. I haven't got a publishing deal. I'm not writing it for that. I'm writing it for me. But how in that position, how did it come about, the book? Were you asked to do it, or did you feel that you really had a lot more to say than, you know, that you could at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I love this story and I'm so happy to talk about it. And I don't think that's me being fat-headed. I think it's just more that I, as a physio, never thought I would ever write a book, and it's happened. And now I'm like, anyone can literally do anything. Like, if I can write a book, God, people can do anything. And I find that like really amazing, because I'm not an author. Well, I am apparently, but I'm
You
not.
are,
Like,
yeah.
you know, I am, but I'm not. You know, I'm just a physio, and now I'm an author as well. And so basically, it all came about. We were James, my husband's friends, who his parents had this kind of farmland in Oxfordshire, and we were all there sitting around a campfire. And I was talking to his mum, who had just retired as a GP, and I think I was recently had Coco, my second, and so we ended up talking about birth. And we just spent ages around the campfire, you know, having a glass of wine. I don't really remember what I talked about, but we were chatting and chatting and chatting. And at the end of it, she just put her hand on my shoulder and looked me in the eyes, was like, you have to write a book, in a way that, you know, people like tell you to do something and you feel like, right, okay, I need to do that. She's like, you need
Like
to write a book.
Jedi mastermind. So
Yeah.
like,
yeah.
You will write a book and like wave
You
your
will.
hand over your face.
Totally like that. And I was like, no, you know, people don't want to hear what I've got to say. And she was like, they do. Like, I've spent 45 years as a specialist in family planning as a GP practice. I can't tell you how many women I've seen through this process. And I didn't know this. And if I didn't know this, then they don't know this.
Wow.
You need to write a book. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you're saying that, then maybe I do need to share that information. It's more of like a duty that I need to share. I've got something to share, right? So I started writing a book and realized it's something that I actually would like to do. So I started writing a book, and it's probably worth saying that I did do English and art at A-level, neither of which are sciences. And apparently you need sciences to do a science degree, which is physiotherapy. So the first time I applied for uni, I got rejected, like massively rejected, because I'd done art. So I hadn't done science. I just
remembered that you're a year older than me, aren't you?
Yeah.
I remember.
So I resat sciences. So I went and I bumped up my biology grade and I bumped up my maths grade, because physio is a bachelor in science, not arts, and all the unis were laughing at me. So I loved writing the book. Like, I sat down, you know, and all that creativity that I obviously hadn't been using all that much, it all came out, you know, the arts and the English literature. Like, I just loved writing the book. And then we went for dinner at one of James's friends' restaurants, and he was like, I'm writing a book too. Like, here's his recipe book. So we were talking about that. It's like, have you got an agent? I'm like, don't be ridiculous. Who has an agent? He's like, I've got an agent. It's great. Best thing is being able to say you've got an agent. Brilliant. So, oh, how do I get an agent? He's like, well, you won't get a book deal without an agent. I'll put you in touch. So he did. First person I spoke to, he was like, you don't need me. I don't talk about vaginas. You need this person. This is Charlotte, who I call like my Charlotte. She's just been incredible. She was pregnant with her little boy. And we just talked over brunch. We just talked and talked and talked. And she was like, you've got something to say that people need to hear. You need to go and write the book. So she was like, I'm going to go and have my baby. You go and write your book. We'll meet in a few months from now. And we'll see what you've got. So that's basically what happened. So then I spent 3 months, literally 1.5 days a week writing. I just dedicated that time to writing. And then when we met, I was like, okay, this is what I've got. And she looked through it and she was like, this is something we can take to a publisher and see if we can get a book deal now. So she helped with the whole publication process. Like, she would send me what she wrote, which was like an application. And I'd be like, oh God, that's me. God, you've made me sound really good. She's made the book sound amazing. Yeah. God, I'd give myself a book deal. Now you've written that about me. And so then we sent it out to she sent it out to a whole load of publishers. And the first one that came back, I won't say who it was, but the first one came back, offered me a deal. And we celebrated that night. We're like, oh my God, whatever happens, you've got a book deal. They wanted to call the book Secrets of a Fanny Physio.
Whoa.
And they were like, so I had pitched the book called Feel Stronger. And that's what I wanted to call it. And they said, yeah, we'll give you this deal, but we'd like to change the title to Sickness for Fanny Physio or something around Fanny Physio because we think it's more sellable. And I was like, oh, I've got a deal. But then the other side of me was like, I felt embarrassed. Like I was selling myself short. I knew I wasn't just a Fanny Physio, but it wasn't, I was accepting that in order to get this deal. And then I knew it wasn't right when we told our families, and an aunt said, and what's the book going to be called? And I couldn't tell her. And then I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Bloomsbury came storming in and were like, yeah, love the book, love the concept, all women team. They just knew, they just got it. But you don't need the feel in there. Just call it stronger.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to feel stronger, but it's not as powerful as just stronger. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. So then, I was like, yes, I've got someone who understands me, and they were amazing. So the editor there, Charlotte. So this is why I have my Charlotte now, my agent, and Charlotte of Bloomsbury, who is what they're called, helped me like take what I'd written and help it, shape it into a book. And like, honestly, the editing process is hilarious. So I found it hilarious because I'm not an author. So I wasn't, any criticism they got, I'm like, oh, thank you. Yes, thanks so much. Rather than maybe it was a bit more precious about my writing, it would have hurt a bit more. It did not hurt me at all because I felt like I wasn't a writer. And literally I'd get, chapters back, be like, no, don't like your tone here. This is far too much physio jargon. No. Oh, I like this bit. More of this bit, please. And then
wow.
Every chapter went through like this. And after the first like 2 or 3, I got it. I knew the tone or where I needed to change the tone, or where I'd gone a bit too physio speak. And so in the next few chapters, we're flying in, flying out. They're like, yeah, much happy with those. But the first few were hilarious. Like, no.
Brilliant.
After that bit, you have a book, you have like, the words. And that's been really hard work, but I've loved it because I've been learning about how to write a book the whole time. And then you start to see the illustrations that I've made. And I find the illustrations in my book hilarious because you can see that it's me, I think. It's down to the point that I wore like a plain black onesie that I'd been given because it was like really figure hugging, and I thought it would show the shape that I was trying to demonstrate. So I took photos of me in this for all of the illustrations. Then the illustrator took the photos and made them sketches, and that's what's in the book, is sketches rather than photographs. But literally, when you look at the sketches, the person in the sketches is still wearing this onesie, and they've got a ponytail in the way that I've got a ponytail, and a quiffy fringe the way I didn't manage to style it right that day. And it's really funny, like looking at it, going, like, it's almost an illustration of me. It's not meant to be me, but it is quite funny to see all those come in and be like, I photographed that. That's a drawing of my photo. And then the covers being illustrated. So my cover, I love. It's really arty. It's like an abstract mom, and there's like a lot of foliage there and flowers to kind of represent that. I really don't want to colour, or as in a person of colour, be that white, yellow, grey, brown, black, whatever, because I didn't want to box anyone in. So by doing it in flowers, it wasn't a colour. Right. And I didn't want to include a face for the same reason. If you put features on a face, you say this is for this type, or this person who looks like this, or whatever. So I really want a face. And I didn't want to rule in or out C-sections because birth is birth. So the illustrator has done like a leafy branch across the tummy that could be a C-section scar, but it might not be. And it's just really feminine and really like suggestive, but not in a sexy way, and just like could be it, could not. Interpret it as you will, but it's for everybody. And then this is the best bit about the cover. So the person who did the night cover, Louisa Riviera, she was sold to me as like the right person when they said she illustrated for, do you know the book Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls?
No,
a brilliant storybook, and it should be Goodnight Stories for Rebel Children because it's most often given to girls, but it's about all these amazing women in the world like Mary Anning and Coco Chanel.
Oh, I do know that book.
Yeah.
I bought it for my niece. I know exactly the book you're talking about.
You should totally have it for we should advocate it for boys as well.
Yeah,
It's kind of, because it's great. And equally, I want to have the boys version because my girl should know about the great men in the world as well, not just the women. And it same goes for both. But anyway, she illustrated in the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls of Immigrant Descent, I think the title is, of Immigrant Girls, I think might be the title. And I'm like, what? She wrote for Goodnight, she illustrated in Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. That is basically my book. My book is, Goodnight Stories for rebel moms who are going to stand up and go, this is not good enough. The care that I get, the 6-week check that I get, the postnatal care is not good enough. Give me a better option. I'm like, this is my book. She's the artist. Do it. And this is her first drawing. And we're like, it's on the cover. She came up with 4 options, but I'm like, no, the first one you did and the colour that you did, you have just nailed it. And that's why, honestly, I love talking about it because everything just fitted and everything was amazing and magical, and everything combined, everything just fell into place, like the art, the English that I did, but my physio skills, the women that I've worked with put their stories in the book. I just feel very grateful to have been able to do it, basically.
Wow.
Cool.
That's so cool. You absolute legend. Did you ever feel scared about it all? But you just sort of
oh my God, terrified.
Yeah.
I'd have sleepless nights. James would say to me, he picked it up. I kind of knew deep down, but until he picked it up, I was horrible to live with when on the day that I'd send things in. So I'd get the chapter ready, I'd send it over, and then I would just be horrible. It's like standing outside the head teacher's office and getting them to mark your best work. It meant so much to me that they liked it. Bloomsbury, the editors liked it because they had all the knowledge, right? I felt like I didn't have the knowledge. They knew how to, get it to market and for people to be the version that people could use and would be the most helpful. And I was just spend that day like really beating myself up and overanalyzing it and could have done this differently. Oh God, she's probably got it now. Oh, she's opened my email. She's probably reading it. I'd really beat myself up about it. And this is why I'm so passionate and excited about the process, because I'm like, I'm not a celebrity. I am just a physio. And I wrote a book, Vid. I wrote a book and it's on the shelf in Waterstones, down the road. Nuts.
So crazy. It's so amazing though. I'm just buzzing with happiness for you that you did it. That you pushed. And I think it's acknowledging, this podcast is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, but that on the other side of feeling that scared about the vulnerability of putting your brain onto paper through words and then sending it off, because the thing is as well with your physio work, straight away you go, does that feel okay? Do you feel pain? So you're getting that instant feedback, and with this you're not getting it. And then once it's published, is anyone going to buy it? What are the reviews going to be? So
it's really scary.
Did it all, but you did it all, and look what you've given to all these women. It's like such an amazing gift, and I feel really shit that I haven't read it yet. I'm so shit. This new podcast I have an author on. I've not even read the book, but I'm going to buy it straight after this, and I'm going to buy it for my friend who's her baby shower's tomorrow, because she will devour it. And I think because even though I'm 3 years down the line of having Jackson, hopefully one day I might be able to have another baby. And I need to know, I need to be better prepared, because I don't want to go down that anyway.
Says it on the cover as well. I really wanted to make a book that was not just for someone who has just had a baby. Your baby might be 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, 16 years old. Unless you've healed and rebuilt after pregnancy and birth, unless you spend time and focus on that, have you ever? We're always postpartum. It's like going, right, I'm not going to go to the gym because I never have. And I could have started back then, but I didn't, so now I can't. You can heal and rebuild at any point. It doesn't have to be immediately afterwards. It's just working out where your priorities need to be, because your body would have gone through a bulk of the healing, but there might just be a little bit left, be that scar tissue or be that full closure of your pelvis. And because you're hypermobile, you'd have to work harder to get that closure of your pelvis. Things which I'm fine in my pelvic floor unless I wouldn't go on a trampoline, or I wouldn't run on day 1 of my period, those sorts of things. But they are warning signs that actually things aren't 100%, and you want to try and just address those things as soon as you feel capable enough to do, whenever that is.
Go on,
I was going to say, hearing you, like in my head, I have this little tally, right, of my book sales, because they won't tell me until I get to 6 months exactly how many have sold. So every time I hear someone in my head, I'm like, okay, well, now that's 11. Okay, 12, definitely. 13 for sure. And James is like, this is just ridiculous, because, like they told me, a little bit down the line that so how many had left the warehouse, and it was a couple of thousand, and I was like, okay, well, I don't give me that's great. In my head, I'm still like got this mental tally. Okay, 1, 2.
But they've already paid you, so
this is the other thing. This is like this mad imposter syndrome. I am terrified, and I actually say this out loud, that they're going to ask me to pay them back.
Are you joking? Oh my love, they're not going to. I've even read it and I know it's amazing, because the thing is that with all creation, what you're doing is putting what you feel passionate and joyful about into something else, and then people can suck that joy. And I mean, through your book, you're empowering women with getting to know themselves and their bodies and how they work and how they can heal. Like, there's nothing, that's an amazing gift. That's better than a wire flower. But if you would like to buy a wire flower, I do have some on my website.
but how nice, as a new baby gift, my book and a bit of wire art, that's like the perfect gift, isn't it?
Yeah, well, she's already got loads of that. So that's why I'm going to get this book. Hopefully Amazon does it, or Waterstones does it like one day.
I'm on Amazon. I'm on Amazon.
You are on Amazon.
Put my name into Amazon and I come up.
Oh, I know. My life.
No.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you can buy it anywhere, which is just amazing. Like my local bookshop, everyone's local bookshop can get it for them. Like when they see it there, I'm just like, that's me.
That is you. You wrote a book, you're an author, you got a publishing deal, you got a book agent.
I've got an agent.
Oh my god, I'm just so buzzing for you, honestly. It's just,
thank you.
I couldn't think of anyone better to become an author that didn't think they could be an author. So you're amazing.
That means a lot. Thanks, God.
Oh no, I just think, yeah, well, we've not, like we've said, like life changes, but we've known each other for almost 20 years. Can you believe that? That's crazy.
I mean, now I just feel old.
Yeah, I know, but we're definitely not old. I mean, some of the capers we've got up to, but it's just, I think, growth and just appreciating how you've just become just such an amazing inspiration. Like, people will be listening to this and they are going to be so inspired by you and go and buy the book.
Nice thought.
But I think it's also just having an idea of how somebody could feel, and knowing that you've been through in a similar situation, but how the quality of life of how you can give that back to somebody, and then you've sat and written it down of how then anybody in the world can feel like that. That's just really, really important. Really, really amazing.
I need to write this down, but I feel like this kind of summarizes it a bit. It's a lady that I had this week for the first time, and this is how my life goes, which is why I love it. Like, she was recommended by someone who'd seen me and I'd helped them, and so then she said, you must go and see Megan. And I just love that. So this lady came to see me. She is 71, and she came to see me this week on this recommendation. And she walked in. I could see she was looking quite nervous. It's hard because we're all still in blooming masks. I could see that she was looking quite nervous. And it wasn't until later on in the appointment where she said to me, when I walked in, I thought I was in the wrong place. I was like, this isn't the right place for me. All these fit looking people exercising, they're much younger than me. I nearly walked out. I nearly didn't stay because I thought, this isn't me. This isn't what I need. I felt so broken when I walked in. I didn't see I fitted here. And so but now I do. Now I can see my place and I know I'm exactly where I need to be. It's just the nicest thing she could say to me, because through the appointment, it became apparent that she'd had a full-blown pelvic organ prolapse a couple of weeks earlier. So just completely innocuous. What happened to her was that she felt, the way she put it to me was like something gave way in my undercarriage. And since then, something's been hanging at the entrance of my vagina and I don't know what it is. And I'm terrified and feels broken. And she was really emotional, like really upset about it, obviously. Felt she was unfixable, didn't know where to turn, didn't know who to ask. And now she felt like she was sitting in the wrong place, having to tell her most vulnerable things to. And then we went through the full assessment. You know, I looked after her as best I could, fitting a pessary for her in the session. Nothing was hanging in her vagina by the end of the session. It was all high up, supported on this petty. She had a plan to fix this. We had a timeline. I was booked her in next week to check on everything. I felt quite proud of like how the session had gone, because I felt like, I'd fixed something. But the way that how grateful she was to me at the end of the session, and what she said to me about feeling broken and not in the right place when she walked in, and to the emails that she sent me afterwards, is like how much more positive she feels, and how kind I'd been to her. That was what she said in the email. Thank you for your kindness. And I honestly, don't cry.
I didn't think you could see. I was trying to hold it in. It's so emotional.
That is like amazing, isn't it?
I think it's just the fact that I think because I've been in a similar situation, you're so vulnerable. Like you're sitting there and you're talking to an absolute stranger. Like there's something not right. I am like, and I could never describe how I was feeling. And I remember our friend Laura, who's also like does a lot of women's health over in Ireland, and I'd spoken to her, and she texted me saying, I can't remember, I've probably still got the conversation. She said something and I replied in her terms and not in a vid way. So she was like, there's something up. And then a couple of weeks later I texted her about something else, and then she was like, do you need to call me? Like, do you need to talk to me on the phone? And I was like, I don't know, do I? She went, well, I think there might be something up. And she'd sort of guessed it. I mean, obviously she knows me, but the fact that you do this day in, day out is because you must understand and feel how people are feeling before they walk in. And the fact that, you're saying you knew that she was nervous, but you're sitting there, it's so vulnerable. Like I've never felt more vulnerable than being examined after I've had Jackson. And actually in every single appointment I had to take him, and he screamed his freaking head off every single time. So it's not like it wasn't a therapeutic kind of time anyway. And this is the thing, it's, if you have to go to the NHS, but if you can read a book that can prevent or help to prevent any of that, but it's just when you're talking about it, like that poor woman and how scared you feel, because you can't see what's going on, you don't understand what's going on.
No, absolutely. And then when you do understand, that is the empowerment. That is why I don't think I'll ever make a shorter book. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to keep it the length it is, which isn't that long, but it's definitely not a 1 day read, a 1 hour read, because we've got to understand. And then the fear goes, or is lessened, the appreciation of our bodies and what it has been through, maybe not yesterday, but like for this lady 41 years ago, what she'd been through and maybe why it was showing up now. And she talked about conversations with her mother, and that she recalls like 40 years ago, saying things don't feel quite right, and her mother saying to her, oh, it never will, darling, you've had a baby. And that's it, that's the end of the conversation. So things, that's only 40 years ago. It doesn't sound that long ago. Things has gone from nothing to now you can have physiotherapy. It shouldn't feel like a big thing. If there is an injury there, you can have therapy to help you to fix it. Don't be afraid to ask for it and speak it out, and take it as any other part of the body. If you had a broken arm, you wouldn't sit and try and run with a broken arm and ignore it as it hurt and throbbed and didn't feel right and wasn't as strong, and you had to give up all the things that you loved because it wasn't feeling strong enough. You would go probably to your GP, hopefully to your GP first, and be like, this is not good enough. I can't live like this. It's not enough. And then they should signpost you and flag you to the person to fix it. So, it shouldn't be a lottery postcode in terms of how your rehabilitation is and how expensive it is and your healing can be. Everyone should have access to this. And I always joke with my friends, I'm like, it shouldn't have a price tag on it. It shouldn't be limited to the people who can afford to pay this for an initial assessment, or if you live here, you get this. It should be out there for free, or $14.99. And then
$14.99 is less than,
that's the thing, in the scheme of things, everything costs money. I'd love to get it out there for free, but all the people involved in getting it out there, when you kind of talk through the story and realize how many people put in, everything has
But you shouldn't feel guilty for that.
And
That price is worth every penny. But also the fact that you're on this podcast, you are now you're going to inspire people to take the, like, if you know,
yes,
that £15 is so valuable. That's the rest of their lives as an empowered woman.
You know, and I didn't want it to be something that people would pick up and go, oh God, now I'm going to have to go and see a women's health physio. Now I'm going to have to go and spend hundreds of pounds going to have this checked out. Absolutely not. Some of us, okay, if you realise that you have got a bigger injury and you try and use the manual to heal, but you can't, then yes, you may need to have other treatment. But that's not what I'm aiming for with the book. I'm aiming it for it to be the manual that you use without any other help you need to pay for or buy, because you are capable if you know what you're doing. It's only your body. I'm only the one who needs to get to know hundreds of thousands of bodies, but you just have to get to know your body, what it's been through and what it needs.
Yeah.
And that is what I wanted to create, was a manual to do that, rather than a signpost to, right now you need to go and see X, Y, Z. Yeah, it should be hopefully all in there.
Oh, you're amazing. To finish off, I would really like to ask you if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago. I've asked other people in the podcast this, but said when you were younger, but I want to be more specific. What would you tell yourself 10 years ago that you know now, that you wish you'd known then?
Be kinder to myself is probably the biggest thing. I have spent quite a little while, probably the last 4 years, I've never done it before that point, but since having a business, I've really needed some support, like some coaching, if you like. And after having Coco, I did have a period of postnatal depression, so I had some CBT then, and I'd never had any like psychotherapy or like mental health, behavioral, I guess, support before, and I'd never had to reflect before. And I've just started this new one, which is like art psychotherapy, because I just never really got there complete with the other things. And this is really weird to say as a 37-year-old mother of 2 kids already. I've just twigged that therapy is for me, to be nice to myself. And I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm not doing it so that I can understand my business partner better, or I can be more like my husband who seems to have it all in line, or I can, so that I can be a better manager for the people who work for me. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm doing it to understand myself and to appreciate myself and to say thank you when people compliment me and be kinder to myself, basically. So yeah, be kind.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, that was a bit of a whirlwind at the end, wasn't it?
No, but that was, yeah.
Oh, and eat the biscuit.
Do you know, I've had the best biscuit of my life yesterday. Saying that,
really?
I'm not a biscuit person. I'm all about the crisps, really, or the peanuts. And a Biscoff cream. Dan brought them home because Dan has run every single day for a month through the shin sprint and everything to raise money for cancer research. He had his last run last night. He went to the shops to buy loads and loads of treats, and he bought these Biscoff cream. Oh my life, I've never had a better biscuit. I'm gonna go and get one because I got up this morning and ran this morning, and deserve it. Deserve a biscuit.
Deserve a treat. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, babe. Honestly,
I have loved this.
Really appreciate it. Your words are just going to light up somebody's day, and your book will empower them to light up every other day after that. So yeah, you're a legend. Thank you, darling.
Thanks, Sid. Thanks for having me, darling.
Lots of love, darling.
Lots of love. Bye-bye.
See you later. Thank you so much for listening to the No Rest for the Vivid podcast. Written, produced and hosted by Claire Hill, and music has been composed by my brother Phil Vidler.